The wind howled through the cracks of a broken house, where Emily Blackwell had spent her entire life hidden in darkness. Born blind, forgotten by the world, her only company was silence and the cold indifference of her mother. But one night, everything changed. A stranger's voice broke through the shadows, promising a life beyond the walls of her despair, a chance to escape, to be seen, to live. As he led her away from the only home she'd ever known, Emily had no idea what awaited her. What happens next will shatter your heart and rebuild it all at once. Will Emily's new life be a dream or a trap? Stay tuned to uncover the unimaginable truth. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Emily Blackwell had never seen the sun. She had never known what the sky looked like, or the faces of the people around her. Her world was defined by darkness, a darkness that was not only physical but also emotional. She was born blind, in one of the most neglected neighborhoods of Detroit, where even the smallest signs of care or kindness were rare. In a place where survival was the main concern, the young girl's life was nothing but a shadow, hidden away in the corners of an old, crumbling house. The house where Emily lived was barely standing. Its wooden walls leaned as if tired of holding the roof above their heads, and the floors creaked with every movement. In the winter, the house became a prison of cold, with icy winds slicing through the cracks in the walls like invisible daggers. There was no heat, no insulation, just the bitter chill that seemed to seep into Emily's bones. It was a house that had long since given up on warmth, both in temperature and in spirit. Emily's mother, Jessica Blackwell, was a woman whose heart had hardened over time. Life had not been kind to her, and she carried that pain like a shield. Jessica had no love to give, not to Emily and not to anyone. She had never held her daughter close, never spoken kindly to her. From the day Emily was born, Jessica had resented her. The birth of a blind child to Jessica seemed like the cruelest joke fate could play. She had cursed Emily's very existence, blaming her for the struggles in her life. Jessica had grown bitter, and her bitterness poured out onto her daughter day after day. Emily, for her part, had long since learned that asking for love or attention was useless. She had stopped crying when she was only 4 years old, after realizing that tears did nothing but bring more coldness and harsh words from her mother. There were no toys to play with, no books to read, not even the comfort of a soft, warm bed. Instead, there was a thin mattress, a rough blanket that scratched her skin, and the constant creaking of the ceiling above her head. Emily's days were quiet, uneventful, and empty. She woke up each morning to an empty stomach if there was no food to be found. She spent her days avoiding her mother's footsteps, staying as quiet and invisible as possible. Emily had learned that silence was her shield, her way of staying safe. Asking questions had always led to shouting or worse, being ignored. So, she learned not to ask. She learned to survive by staying out of the way, by blending into the background as much as possible. Her world was one of routine. Wake up, find food, avoid her mother, and wait for sleep to come again. There was nothing more to it. The only sound that ever comforted Emily was the occasional chime from a wind chime on a neighbor's porch. It was faint and barely audible through the broken window of her room, but it was enough. On nights when the wind blew just right, Emily would close her eyes and imagine that the chime was speaking to her. She imagined it telling her that there might be a different world out there, one where she didn't have to be afraid, where she didn't have to be alone. But those thoughts were fleeting. Hope was something Emily had stopped feeding long ago. She had learned that hope only led to disappointment. That night, however, something was different. The wind howled harder than usual, pressing against the walls of the house. It felt like the world outside was screaming, but inside, there was nothing but silence. Emily curled up tighter on her mattress, trying to block out the cold that bit at her skin. She had grown so used to the harshness of her surroundings that it barely affected her anymore. But then, as the wind's scream grew louder, she heard something new. Footsteps. Heavy boots crunching on the dry leaves outside the house. The door creaked open, and for a moment, Emily thought she might have imagined it. But then she heard her mother's voice, sharp and cold. "He's in the other room." Emily couldn't make out what the man said, but she could feel the shift in the air as he entered her room. The familiar, moldy, smoky smell of her house was replaced with something else, something clean, like leather and cologne. It wasn't the kind of smell she was used to, but she didn't know what to make of it. The man's voice was gentle as he called her name. "Emily?" But Emily didn't answer. She had learned long ago not to respond to strangers. Her mother's voice had always been the only one that mattered, and her mother had never been kind. The man spoke again, softer this time. "I'm going to take you somewhere. Somewhere safe." Emily sat up slowly, feeling the unfamiliar warmth of the man's presence. She waited for her mother to object, to shout at him or pull her away. But there was nothing. Just silence. The man reached out, and Emily flinched at the unexpected touch. His hand was large, warm, and comforting in a way she had never felt before. "It's okay," he said. "You can trust me." Emily didn't know what trust meant. She didn't know if she could trust him, but something in his voice made her stand up. Slowly, hesitantly, she allowed him to guide her through the house, past the broken furniture and the peeling walls. The wind slapped her face as they stepped outside, but the man led her quickly to a car. When the door closed, she was surrounded by warmth, a warmth that felt foreign and new. The car's seats were smooth and cool against her skin, and the air smelled different, clean, and fresh. As the engine hummed to life, Emily kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her heart thudded in her chest, louder than the tires on the road. She didn't know where they were going, but for the first time she wasn't afraid. She wasn't sure if she should trust the man, but deep down, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something different, something better. As the car sped away from the only life she had ever known, Emily realized that for the first time, she wasn't walking alone. The journey felt endless. Emily's heart raced. With every passing mile, her mind swirling with questions she didn't know how to ask. The man's presence beside her offered a strange kind of comfort, yet she couldn't fully understand what was happening. All she knew was that she was leaving the broken house behind, and for the first time in her life there was a sense of safety surrounding her. It wasn't the kind of safety she had known. There were no harsh words, no cold stares, no pain. Instead, there was warmth. But was it real? The sound of the tires on the road became a steady rhythm, like the beat of her heart, almost hypnotic. The darkness outside the car window pressed in on her, but inside, everything was different. The seats were soft, the air was warm, and the man, he remained calm and reassuring, as if he knew exactly what she needed, even when she couldn't find the words. She sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap, unsure of what to expect next. Her past had taught her to be cautious, to question every kindness, but something about this moment felt different. After what felt like an eternity, the car slowed, and Emily felt it. There was a shift in the air around her. The harsh sounds of the city were gone. No car alarms blared, no distant shouting echoed through the streets. The only noise was the soft whisper of the wind and the gentle hum of the car as it rolled to a stop. Emily's senses flared, alert to the new environment, the unfamiliar peace. The man opened the door and helped her out carefully. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she could feel the difference. The air was softer here, gentle against her skin, with none of the biting cold she had grown so used to. No sounds of honking horns or angry shouts, only the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Her bare feet felt the smoothness of the ground, a far cry from the rough and splintered floors of her old home. It was a place that felt untouched by the harshness of the world. Emily stood still for a moment, taking it all in. Her senses, so used to the cold and the chaos of her former life, were overwhelmed by the quiet beauty of this new place. The man's steady presence beside her guided her forward as they walked towards what Emily could only describe as a sanctuary. The house loomed ahead, large and welcoming. The soft light from the windows spilled out onto the yard, casting a warm golden glow that seemed to promise something good. Inside, everything was different. The floors were smooth beneath her feet, and every surface she touched was clean, polished, and inviting. There were no cold, decaying walls, no cracks in the ceiling. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and fresh flowers, a scent Emily had never encountered before. It was soothing, comforting, as if this place existed just to offer her peace. She couldn't help but feel the weight of her past life lift, even if only a little, as she stepped deeper into the house. "This is your new home." The man's voice was gentle, but there was a hint of something else in it, something warm, like the invitation to a new beginning. Emily didn't respond at first, still unsure of the situation. Home. The word felt strange to her. She had never known what home truly meant. Her old house had been a place of survival, not comfort. But this place felt different. It felt like safety. The man led her through the hallways, and Emily explored each room with tentative steps. The soft carpet beneath her feet, the gentle hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the background, the quiet hum of life. Everything was calm, peaceful. The walls seemed to hum with life, as if they were made to cradle her in their embrace. And the bed. When Emily was led to her new room, the bed was the first thing she noticed. It was soft, warm, and inviting. It wasn't just a bed. It was a promise of comfort, of rest. For the first time in her life, Emily allowed herself to sink into that comfort. She lay down on the soft sheets, feeling the warmth wrap around her. The blanket was thick, and as it settled around her small frame, she felt herself relax in a way she hadn't been able to for years. The anxiety that always clung to her seemed to fade, replaced by a sense of peace she had never known. As she closed her eyes, she realized that for the first time in years she was not afraid. Not afraid of the darkness that had once engulfed her. Not afraid of the silence that had always been her companion. As the night passed, Emily lay awake in her new bed, her thoughts swirling. She wondered about the man who had brought her here. Who was he? What did he want from her? She had been raised to question every kind gesture, to doubt anyone who tried to help. But William Carrington, the man who had saved her from the broken house, didn't seem to expect anything in return. His kindness was genuine, his actions steady and calm. He had given her something no one else ever had: hope. The night passed slowly, and Emily drifted into a sleep free from the fear that had haunted her for as long as she could remember. The warmth of the bed surrounded her, and the silence in the house was not the cold, oppressive silence of her old home. It was a quiet that held peace, a quiet that allowed her to breathe deeply, without the weight of dread hanging over her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she didn't feel alone in the world. She didn't feel like a forgotten girl lost in the shadows. In this new place, Emily could imagine the possibility of something more, a life beyond the darkness. The next morning when Emily awoke, she was greeted by the gentle light filtering through the window. It wasn't the harsh light of day that pierced her skin. It was soft, like the touch of a caring hand. She stretched slowly, feeling the warmth of the blanket against her skin, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel trapped. This was the beginning of something new, something she couldn't fully understand yet, but something she was willing to embrace. The man, William, had given her a chance to leave behind the darkness, a chance to live. And though Emily didn't know what lay ahead, she knew one thing for sure: she was no longer invisible. She was no longer forgotten. She had been found, and maybe, just maybe, that was all she needed to start again. The days that followed were a blur for Emily. She had awoken in a world she barely recognized, a world full of warmth, safety, and kindness. Each morning brought a new experience, new sensations that had once been beyond her imagination. The soft sunlight that filtered through the windows, the gentle hum of life in the house, the soothing sounds of nature outside. All of it was new to Emily. It was a world she had never dreamed possible, And yet here she was, living it. As she explored her new surroundings, Emily discovered more than just the physical comforts of the house. She found warmth in the way people spoke to her, gentleness in every word, care in every gesture. Unlike the cold, dismissive words of her mother, the voices here were full of understanding and patience. It wasn't just the environment that had changed, it was the people too. And in particular, there was Dr. Meredith, a kind woman with a soft voice who had introduced herself as a doctor. Dr. Meredith was unlike anyone Emily had ever met. She had a calm, soothing presence that made Emily feel safe, even in the midst of the unknown. The doctor explained gently but clearly that she would undergo a procedure, a chance to give her something she had never experienced. Sight. Dr. Meredith had spoken of a corneal transplant, a procedure that would give Emily the opportunity to see, to experience the world in ways she had never imagined. At first, the idea of surgery scared Emily. She had never known what it was like to see, to fully understand the concept of sight. What if it hurt? What if she couldn't adjust? The questions swirled in her mind, but Dr. Meredith's calm assurances gave her something she had never had before: hope. The idea of seeing was a concept beyond her grasp. She didn't know what colors were, what shapes looked like, or what faces might look like. She didn't even know what the world beyond the walls of this house would look like. But the thought of the possibility was enough to stir something in her, a small flicker of excitement, a spark of curiosity. She had lived her entire life in darkness, but now there was a chance, however small, that she could step into the light. As the day of the surgery approached, Emily's anxiety began to grow. She lay in her soft bed at night, staring at the ceiling that she could not see, imagining what it might be like to open her eyes and witness the world. She had heard people talk about color, about light and dark, about beauty and the ordinary things in life, but it all felt so far out of reach. She wasn't sure what it would feel like to open her eyes and actually see. Would it be overwhelming? Would it hurt? And most of all, would she be disappointed? The night before the surgery, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, thinking about all the questions she didn't have answers to. She wondered what the future held. Would this new life be real? Or was it just another fleeting moment of kindness that would disappear like the others? She thought of her old life, the cold house, the bitterness of her mother's rejection, the emptiness that had filled her every day. But now she was in a place where warmth existed, where people cared about her. She was no longer invisible. And she wondered, as she lay there in the quiet of her room, if she could learn to be someone who could see the world, not just with her eyes, but with her heart. The next morning arrived, and with it came the quiet anxiety that had settled in her chest. The day had come. Emily had heard the word surgery so many times, but now, as the clock ticked closer to the moment of truth, it felt real. She dressed slowly, her fingers trembling as she adjusted her hospital gown. She wasn't sure why she was so nervous. The people around her had been nothing but kind. They had all reassured her that the surgery would be safe. And yet, something about the idea of seeing for the first time, of stepping into a world she had never known, was both thrilling and terrifying. William, the man who had brought her here, appeared at her door. He had been a constant presence in Emily's life since that fateful night when he had taken her from the broken house. She trusted him, but trust, she knew, was not something easily earned. William's calm smile and kind eyes reassured her, though, and as she looked into them, she felt a wave of gratitude. He had given her a chance at life, a chance to leave behind the shadows and live in the light. "It's okay to be scared," William said softly, his voice steady as he approached Emily. "You're not alone in this." Emily nodded, though she didn't speak. She didn't know what to say. She had never had the words for feelings like these: the fear of the unknown, the hope for something better, the desire to see, to understand, to belong. William reached out and gently took her hand. "You're stronger than you know," he said with a smile, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "We'll get through this together." The surgery was performed later that day. Emily was rolled into the sterile operating room, her mind racing with thoughts she couldn't put into words. She felt the coolness of the metal table beneath her as the medical staff prepared her. A mask was placed over her face and someone's kind voice whispered in her ear, "Just breathe, Emily. You're safe here." The world slipped away. She fell into a deep sleep, unaware of what was happening around her, but knowing somehow that when she woke up, everything would be different. When Emily opened her eyes again, the world was a blur, but something was different. The light was brighter, warmer. She could see shapes, shadows, and faint outlines. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She blinked, and the world around her began to sharpen. Slowly, she began to see the outlines of faces, of objects, of the room she was in. Her heart raced as her mind struggled to comprehend what she was experiencing. For the first time, Emily could see. And for the first time, she could see hope. As the days passed, Emily's vision slowly began to improve. At first, everything was a blur. Shapes, colors, and lights blended together in a haze that made it difficult for her to distinguish anything clearly. The world she had once known through sound and touch was now being painted with new strokes of light, like a masterpiece she could hardly grasp. But slowly, as if the pieces of a puzzle were being put together one by one, Emily began to see more clearly. The doctors had explained to her that her vision wouldn't be perfect right away. The healing process would take time. But even the smallest change, seeing shapes more distinctly, recognizing the warmth of the sun through the window, felt like a miracle to Emily. She had spent so many years trapped in the darkness, relying only on her other senses to make sense of the world. But now she was experiencing it all in a way she had never imagined. And with every passing day, she felt a little closer to understanding what the world was truly like. One afternoon, as she sat in her room by the window, Emily gazed outside, feeling the soft light on her face. It was the first time she had truly felt the sun's warmth. She had always heard about the sun, its brightness, its heat, but now she could feel it in a way that was entirely new. The sunlight seemed to touch her skin, and as she closed her eyes for a moment, she could almost hear the whispers of the breeze through the trees, the rustle of leaves she had never seen but could now begin to imagine. She could feel the warmth of the earth beneath her feet, and in that moment, Emily realized that the world she had once thought of as cold and unkind had always been there, waiting for her to see it. Her days had become filled with discovery. She spent hours in the garden, where William had taken her to feel the soft petals of flowers, the coolness of the grass beneath her bare feet. She could now see the vibrant colors of the flowers, reds, yellows, pinks, and the way the wind moved the branches of the trees, casting dancing shadows on the ground. Every new sight was like a gift she had never expected, each one adding to the growing sense of wonder that filled her heart. One evening, as Emily walked through the house, her hand brushing against the smooth walls, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. It was William, who had been her constant companion in this strange new life. She smiled as she turned toward him. She had grown accustomed to the warmth of his presence, the gentleness with which he guided her through this new world. He had given her more than just a new life. He had given her the chance to see herself as something more than the forgotten girl in the shadows. "Are you ready to go outside today?" William asked, his voice full of excitement. Emily nodded. She had learned to trust him, to trust that this new world was something worth experiencing, something worth embracing. She followed him outside, the familiar soft warmth of the sun greeting her once again. As they walked toward the garden, Emily felt the grass beneath her feet, each blade like a soft whisper that grounded her in the present moment. She could see the beauty of the flowers around her, their colors no longer a mystery to her but a vibrant reality that filled her senses. As they reached the center of the garden, William stopped and turned to face her. He smiled gently, his eyes filled with warmth and care. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Emily?" Emily shook her head, her eyes wide with curiosity. She had learned not to expect compliments or words of praise in her life. The only voice she had ever known was one of harshness, of silence, of neglect. But William's voice was different. His words were full of something Emily had never felt before: care. He reached out and took her hand, his grip steady and sure. "I see a girl who has faced darkness," he said softly. "But I also see a girl who is learning to step into the light. You're stronger than you think, Emily. I see someone who has a future filled with possibilities." His words struck Emily like a soft, comforting breeze. She had never thought of herself as strong, never seen herself as someone who could have a future. The darkness had always been there, wrapping itself around her, holding her back. But now, as she stood in the garden with the sun shining on her face and the warmth of William's words filling her heart, she began to understand something new. She wasn't defined by her past. She wasn't defined by the darkness that had once ruled her life. For the first time, Emily allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future. It was a future where she could be more than just the blind girl in the shadows. She could be someone who experienced the world, someone who saw it not just with her eyes, but with her heart. And that was something she had never dared to hope for before. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden, Emily stood still for a moment, looking out at the world before her. She could see the sky, its fading shades of purple and orange. She could see the leaves of the trees the way they moved in the evening breeze. She could see the world in all its beauty, its wonder, and its life. And for the first time, she realized that she was part of it. As the night fell, Emily lay in her soft bed, the blanket wrapped around her. She closed her eyes, not in fear but in peace. She had seen the darkness, had lived through it, but now she was walking toward the light. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer the forgotten girl in the shadows. Tomorrow would come, and she would face it with open eyes, with open heart. And the world, for the first time, seemed full of endless possibilities. The girl who had once been lost in darkness was now walking into the light, and nothing, not even the darkest past, could take that away from her. Tomorrow was hers to embrace.